Well, hello, guys. This is Daniel Alexander Cannon here on the Supernatural Show. And today I have a special guest on with me. Some of you might be familiar with. He's Dan. He's from the YouTube channel More Than a Conqueror. And we're doing a little two dudes hanging out today because Shannon is celebrating her mother's birthday today with her. So she's not going to be available here with us today, our co-host. But me and Dan's going to hang out. And we're gonna talk about a couple of an interesting subject, a subject that some people still believe is fantasy, but I'm at the level of knowledge, and so is Dan, that this stuff is not fantasy. But what we're going to talk about is the legendary Bigfoot. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the DNA, which is really what I really wanted to do this episode on. But we're going to really probably end up spending more time about the voice. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at some of the video from a military trained linguist that was in charge of training people how to break language codes and secret languages that were made up for military and other communication purposes. He gets in, and we're going to show you the video here in a minute. He gets into showing you the recorded voices of some Bigfoot, Sabe, whatever you want to call them, the woods people. And he's going to get into breaking down how they speak, and some of the recordings that he's going to be speaking on are called the Sierra, the Sierra recordings out of the Sierra Mountains out west here in the United States. But before we quite get to that, I want to check in with Mr. Dan today and see what in the supernatural is going on with him.
Well, that's basically what I do, is check in and see what the supernatural is going on around here. Especially when we got to a subject as fascinating as Bigfoot is. Because it's always been a fact and yet point of legend that has kept people mystified for decades. So I'm looking forward to this show big time.
Well, they've over the many years, many people have heard about myths and legends and all these things. And like when I was a kid, they used to call it the boogeyman will get you if you go in the woods at nighttime. The boogeyman or the boogerman. And it's like, where did that legend come from? That there was a boogeyman in the woods. And all these legends and myths, they all come from somewheres or sometime, either in the past or maybe even potentially altered dimensional type things. But all things come from somewheres. They're anything that sticks in society as much as the legend of a tall, hairy being, man and woman, that live in the woods. It comes from somewheres. And me and Dan have done quite a bit of talking and such on this subject off air, and even a little bit today and previous other times. And we're interested in seeing where this can go and what we can figure out. And I thought I would introduce Dan to this linguist today, and this was a good opportunity to do that. And it's taking a listen to this linguist. But before we get to the linguist, I wanted to share my screen, and I wanted to mention Dave Politis real quick, because and I really wanted to play some of his videos, but he makes it real clear that his videos are copyrighted material. And so he doesn't like to have anybody playing his videos for whatever reason, and that's fine. But I've actually sent in an email to Dave trying to get a hold of him. And I've also sent one in to Steve with How to Hunt, the facts with How to Hunt, his YouTube channel. And this video right here, as a matter of fact, I got it right here pulled up. I think there's one big. Oh, here, yeah. So here's Steve. He lives up in Vancouver, Washington, or excuse me, Vancouver, Canada, on the island up there, the big, huge island up there, and he lives on it. And he's had quite the continued experiences. In this video here, it says, what just happened to me today is mind blowing. And what happened was, in short, he had a big buck knife that he lost about a year and a half ago or something like that, somewhere around that time frame, that he lost up in the mountains. It fell out of his backpack or whatever. And he's had many experiences, but in this one, what happened was he was back up there in the mountains again, going around, sitting down, telling his stories, reading the emails that people send him about the stories, and doing that kind of stuff up there, or maybe checking some of his game cams and all this kind of stuff. But he ended up walking away from his bag that he had there with him again that day, a bag that he had emptied many times since the losing of his buck knife. He ended up going back to his bag, and something had found his buck knife that he had lost the year before and placed it back in his bag. And it kind of blew his mind a little bit to go there, and his buck knife is without a sheath, now back in his bag. And I'm sure he feels that it was done supernaturally somehow by these beings, because in a lot of his videos, they show up in different ways. He's up there around them and he's talking about them, and they visit him, and they've thrown rocks and various things through his video. You can see all kinds of weird things going on. And you say, well, somebody could make all that up. Yeah, they could. But Steve ain't making it up. I don't believe he's making it up for a second. I've watched probably 500 of his videos and gaining the knowledge from his work that he does. And Steve, if you happen to be listening, I appreciate you, and I recommend my audience to go over and subscribe to your channel. And then, of course, like I said, we have Dave Politis with Canaan Missing Project, where he studies the missing people that go missing in the forest a lot of times, and in the national parks. You know, the arcs, the park arcs, the word arc being in there should be very interesting to many of y'all guys with the studies that I've been doing lately, because it catches my interest, because the arc itself is related to the toroidal fields, which are gateways. Just like your eye is a gateway, it opens and closes, just like an iris, just like you see in the show. What was it? The show where they would open up the gateway and go through the water, and it looked like it would spin up like you were flushing a toilet, and then it would come back and level out and flatten out, and then they would walk through it. It was called. You remember what that was, Dan?
I really don't off the top of my head.
No, yeah, I can't remember the name of it. Something of the gateway or some kind of. It was a series. Anyways, point is
Stargate, wasn't it?
Stargate. That's it. Stargate. Yep, exactly. But Dave, what he did is he was involved in the collection of a number of samples, a large number of samples. I believe, if I remember correctly, it was in excess of 100 samples of what was believed to be samples that would have DNA of the Sabe people, the Bigfoot, whatever you want to call them, woods people, so on. There's other names that I could come to mind as well. And that's what we're seeking, is see if some of those other names might be related and might be the true nature of these beings, but we'll see. They did the studies and everything, and since I can't get into it, I can't play his video because I want to honor what he's requesting. So I can't play his video, but what I can say is that what they did was they found out that the DNA from the Sabe, with all the different samples, and a lot of it would turn out to be solid samples, and they ran it through the DNA tests and everything, and it come back with having a mother of a female human, but the father is unknown, is unrecorded, no record of that DNA matching any man. It was sounds very familiar, like a story I've heard in some other cases. Like other stories of maybe biblical, where there were women who produced children that um, that the mother was said to have been entreated by God or a god or something in a number of cases. And of course, this is all very controversial topic to be talking about. So we're not going to go too far into that, but we're already controversial enough in the fact that we're going to take a look at some audio. Actually, is what we're going to do. Is we're going to really focus on the discussion of the the language of a Sabe Bigfoot creature or whatever they are. And there happens to be this military linguist, and I found his information on this channel here, where she goes into in these two videos right here. So if you go to it, it's you can find it on her channel. I don't know if it'll show up on the first two or not for you, but that's where I got it. And you can go there and look it up. It's called Bigfoot, the Language. And this is a guy that was trained by the military. And what we're going to do is, Dan and I, we're going to play some of this video and listen to it and sit back, take it in, and we're going to stop it along the way and discuss it. His name is, the linguist's name is Scott Nelson, Nelson. And yeah, we're going to listen to it and stop it along the way. And Dan, if you want me to stop it, all you got to do is just speak up, okay? And I'll pause it, and we can talk about whatever you want to talk about at that moment. And then I'll stop it. Okay, so just speak up, and it don't matter when. So let me go ahead and pull this video to the stage here, and let's start watching it. And again, this is a professional military-trained linguist that was trained how to break code of languages, of any kind of language. Even ones that were made up in order to communicate in military situations. A lot of times people have said that they sound like, when they're talking, they sound kind of like, people use the word samurai chatter. Samurai chatter. But we'll listen to this and see what this guy's got to say and comment along the way. So here we go.
This lady had a story about Bigfoot, that she heard something one night. And how did she describe what it sounded like, Mary?
She said it scared her, that it was, I don't know, I don't remember.
Well, she said it sounded like something that she'd never heard before.
Right.
And it really terrified her. And there's some Boy Scout camp around here that there are a lot of stories about that same thing. So maybe we can check that out after we do our interview.
Right. What did they call it?
Momo. It's Momo. Missouri Monster, I think.
Some antique shopping, and this guy. He was right next door to our little rental house where we met up with Scott Nelson, the expert on the language of Bigfoot.
And minute.
Dan, can you hear that okay?
Yes, sir.
Yes. Originally grew up in the Rocky Mountains, pretty heavy Bigfoot country, but I was never into that. Had a lot of friends that believed in Bigfoot, and they called him all kinds of different things. You know, each Indian tribe or nation has a different name for the Sasquatch. I joined the Navy early. I have a BA degree in literature and communications.
We'll stop him right there for a second, and I just thought about it before I forget it. I had a photo I wanted to share with everybody that a sheriff's deputy took recently. And then we're going to go right back to the conversation. I'm just going to share this photo real quick. This is the photo in question that I'm referring to that was taken by a sheriff's deputy. And as you can see, the creature he's very thick. He has a kind of a conical head. If you look at his see here. If you look at his hands, there you can see the hands are massive and the feet are massive. And just the whole body is thick, and that the hands hang down to the knees, and that the thigh bone is shorter, or rather shorter than a human's, and the arms are about the same length as his legs. This allows a creature like this to go down on all fours and run on all fours, you see. But yeah, you can see the hair hanging off of him, and you can see a side profile of the face. Let's see if I can zoom in on that some. You can see a little bit of a side profile. You can see what looks like maybe the side of the nose or something like that coming down. Not a gorilla type nose. It's more of a human type nose. And you can just barely see some of it there. But I thought it was really one of the best photos I've ever seen that shows the true proportions, because the proportions is what it's all about. They don't have long legs like we do, because if we try to go down on all fours, we look like idiots and we can't do it. But their legs and arms are approximately the same length, and they can go down all fours and run like the wind. So with that being said, let's go on back to our video. Unless you had any comment on that, Dan, or anything.
No, in fact, that's probably the best picture I've seen.
Right. Yep. That is like a really, really good photo. I really would like to get an original copy of it, but trying to do some finding of it, but I haven't had no luck yet. If anybody knows how to get a hold of that, please go on the website and get a hold of me. You can literally go on there, even if you're not a member of the website, the supernatural.show. And there's a chat button down in the lower right-hand corner. You can click on that, and you can send me a message. Just pick Daniel and send me a message, and you can attach a photo, or you can send me links or anything. But yeah, if y'all guys know anything about it, I want to hear about it. Or you can log into the website and post it in the Sabe Bigfoot discussion group as well. All right, let's keep going.
Two-time graduates of the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center in Monterey, California. After that, 20 years of cryptologic technician interpreter, which that deals with the collection of voice communications, then the transcription, then the analysis, and then the reporting of the intelligence that we gather from the collection. I believe that one of my most important qualifications is the hundreds into the thousands of hours of listening to the human voice on tape. I had my son with me at school. And one day I was teaching at Wentworth Military College, so I had brought him to school with me. He was 12 years old at the time, and he had a project that he had to work on for school. He had to write a paper on UFOs, the Loch Ness Monster, or Bigfoot. Which of those three do you want to write on? He says, okay, let's write it on Bigfoot.
I want to say this too, is if Scott, if you happen to be out there at some point and see this video, I would love to have you on as a guest as well. Same thing with Politis and also Steve, of course. All three of you, I would love to have you on individually, together, however it would work. Would love to have you on here and have some conversation and share some of the knowledge and theories that exist that we have and that I have and that Dan has and you know, see if we can help each other. Matter of fact, I sent Politis and Steve an email today, so hopefully they'll be getting back with me.
So I said, okay, let's Google Bigfoot. And he says, Dad, what do you think Bigfoots sound like? And I remembered some B-grade movie from the 70s, and I just let out this howl, and I think they sound like, you know. And he goes, Dad, come on. That's not what Bigfoot sound like. I said, well, let's Google it. So we did. And the first place it took us to was the BFRO website, which I didn't know existed at the time. That's the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization. And it had a little prompt there, Bigfoot sounds. Literally, Bigfoot sounds. So I punched on that, and it brought up the strangest sounds I had ever heard. It gave me little snippets of the Sierra sounds, just little snippets. But in those little snippets, what we linguists would call a morpheme stream, or a sentence, or an utterance, right? I heard something that I didn't believe at first, right? And so I played a little bit more, and I was so totally focused on it because I was amazed at what I was hearing. That my son said, Dad, what's the matter? I said, listen to this. And I went back and I played it again. And I went back and I played it again. And he said, Dad, what are you talking about? He said, that sounds like apes fighting. I said, son, there's language in here. The reason that I'm recognizing this is because all of my years of manipulating the human voice on tape, speeding it up and slowing it down to try to recover the phonemes or the sounds of languages that are not even my target language. We're required to know how to do that. I left that school that day with Steven, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. But it set me on a quest, if you will, a little detective work to find out where these tapes came from. I approached the BFRO, where you got them, and I got a call from the head of the Bay BFRO, right? Pretty famous guy now. But he told me, he says, don't go there. And this guy was very honest. We're still acquaintances and friends, you know. And I completely understood at that time where he was coming.
Let's pause it for a second because I think someone couldn't stand it and they had to come and visit.
Hi, guys. Only had a few minutes, but I wanted to pop in and say hi.
Good afternoon, Miss Shannon.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I somehow had a feeling you weren't going to be able to stand it. You was going to pop in somehow or another. Me and Dan were talking about it before we went live. But we're listening to this military trained linguist. I don't know if you heard much of it so far or anything, but it's military trained linguist, and he's talking about the language that has been recorded a few different times, and he took it serious and ultimately got into analyzing it and breaking the code on the language and stuff like that. And he's explaining how all that works, and we're starting to get into it anyways. One of the coolest things was, when I remember from his interview here, was he explains that they speak on the inhale and on the exhale. And they speak extremely fast. They're not drawing out the words like I'm doing, like this. Hey, how y'all guys doing? I'm down here in South Carolina. They talk pop, 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 like that. You know,
Your impression is pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good, right? But I practiced it quite a bit, actually. But on the inhale and the exhale is how they speak. And of course, they have a huge chest, huge lung volumes. and their vocal system is different than ours in some ways. But yeah, that's what we're doing. But glad you had a moment to drop in.
Yeah.
But for the purpose of the audience, let's keep listening to our man here explain things. Okay.
Coming from. He said on that phone call, he called me, right? Because I'd sent him a big email as to what I had. And I was just trying to find the tapes. He called me and we had a good conversation. He says, Scott, if you go there, it will throw a big wrench in what we're trying to do. He said, we're in the middle of a big battle right now. Struggle against science and everything, all the institutions, right? Just to try to prove their existence or to get science to accept the fact that just even the possibility that they exist. He says, if you come out with this now, it'll throw a wrench into everything we've tried to do for years and years. Got another call from a person in the BFRO that was interested in what I had.
I will say this, just making commentary when it comes to the BFRO. I sent in a communication to them, to this organization some years back. Well, not that long back, but a while back. And explaining, talking about some of the supernatural aspects that I had experience with when it comes to the Sabe, Bigfoot. And they never responded to me, and my stuff never showed up on the website. And Lord forgive me if I'm wrong, but what I think the BFRO is a, if you want to control an organization, lead it. Or if you want to control a conversation, lead it. And so I think that for the majority, the BFRO are agents or people that are being controlled by agents that are trying to narrate the story of Bigfoot in a certain way, of them being some kind of a half monkey, half man kind of thing, and it's not exactly like that. And completely ignoring the supernatural aspects of these beings and their supernatural capabilities and their level of intellect being at an extremely high level. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Anybody can have their own opinion, and I would consider anybody's opinion, but that's mine when it comes
I
to
tried contacting the BFRO probably 3 years ago with the same response you got. My curiosity was, is this Project Bluebeam Verse 2?
Mm-hmm.
Because they seem to try and focus everybody's belief into a single being, a single thought process.
Right.
And so I just sent a series of questions and articles to them just to see what response, and never did hear from them back. So I tend to agree with you there. Yeah.
And there's other people that I consider credible, such as Steve from the How to Hunt channel, and he feels the same way. And so, yeah, this gentleman's speaking about it.
Before you go
doesn't
to that point, there's a gentleman that does Bigfoot hunting here in Tennessee. You may know who I'm talking about. He has a camera that he also puts on the back of his backpack.
Oh, I know exactly. Carpenter.
Yes, that's him.
Unfortunately, I think he just passed away.
That one where he was walking and he actually filmed the portal opening.
Yep, that's
and
right.
And being nailed down in that portal, watching as he to make sure that Carpenter got past that point before exiting.
Yep, that's right. That's the guy, and that's part of the supernatural attributes. And he was Scott Carpenter, and he was doing if anybody in Scott's family's listening, I really admired Scott, and I'm sorry
Yes, I did too.
for your guys' loss. And I hate to be the one to notify anybody of that, but unfortunately, if I'm correct, I think we lost Scott. I don't know what happened or whatever, but yeah, he was. But you're right, he did. He would go walk through the woods and put a camera on his shoulder, and he got really good at it. Where he had his own gimbal and everything, so it would be stable, and he would film behind him while he was walking. And he caught a lot of things going on behind him where they don't realize that you're still looking. And because he had the camera facing backwards, because he knew they were out there and he knew they were observing him and stuff. But yeah, that portal opening was a fantastic video. If anybody's interested in his channel, you can go just pull up Scott Carpenter, maybe even the word portal, and you're going to find his information, his knowledge is still out there. And Scott was really an awesome dude. I was about heartbroken when I heard that he something had happened and he had passed, but he was a good man. He tried to help a lot of people, just like what we're doing here and stuff. But yeah. So, anyways, any other thoughts there, Dan, or we'll keep going?
Go ahead, please.
Okay.
And she, I owe her a lot for this, because otherwise I never would have gotten involved. She went out on a limb and called me and told me that the person that I need to get a hold of is Ron Moorhead. And that's the person I had to call. And that's all she said. And that was enough. So I made a few phone calls, and I finally found his office, talked to his secretary, left my name and number, never got a call back. So he wasn't returning calls. But I called back again, and he happened to pick up the phone. And I spent probably a half an hour on the phone with him, convincing him that I was legitimate. Finally, he agreed, and within 2 days I had 2 CDs. I began to transcribe them according to military standards. And it took me 4 months. The 2 different tapes. One was recorded by Al Berry in 1972 up at the top of the Sierra Mountains in what they call the Sierra Camp. And the other tape was what I call the Moorhead tape, was recorded by Ron Moorhead in 1974. So they were spaced out by 2 years, but both recorded at the same place. Some difference. I believe that they were the same creatures or the same family unit, but they were different in that. In Ron's tape, I believe they were trying to slow their utterances down to try to communicate with the humans. They were trying to actually, of course they couldn't, because their language is so different. But I believe that they were trying to slow the prosody of the deliverance down. No, 72 tape, the delivery of the utterances was at least twice as fast as that of humans by the Sasquatches. If these creatures are actually Sasquatches, I can't say what they are. All I know is that whatever it is, it's not a human being, and they're speaking in complex language. From that point, it took me 4 months to transcribe all of them, because there's over 90 minutes of it. And as you will see in my when I demonstrate my methodology, which all comes from my training in the Navy, it takes 15 minutes or a half an hour to get a little 3 or 4 second clip to get it down correctly. So it took me about 4 months once I had them done, I drove out to California to meet face to face with Ron and Al. I drove out to California to meet Ron and Al personally. And one of the first things I said to them is, I cannot believe that I am the first person to detect language in these sounds. And it had been 35 years. I had read by that time I had read all of the Bigfoot books, including a new book that had just come out at the time, Sasquatch Meets Science, very, very good book, written by Dr. Jeff Meldrum, who's big in the research community. Not in any of these books was there ever one hint that these creatures might have a language. And so I brought that up to Ron and Al. I says, I don't believe that I could be the only person ever, the first person ever to have discovered this. And they looked at each other and they looked at me and says, Scott, we always knew. Especially Ron, because Al remained a skeptic for a long time. But they said, yes, we always knew that they were speaking a language to each other. He knew there was more than one. In Al's tape and in Ron's tape, has to be a massive male because of the resonance and just, the feel. You can almost feel the power of their utterance. And then there's a female. Obviously, and coming.
Speaking of the power of their voices, Shannon and Dan have both heard me say that I live in a place here near the coast in South Carolina, and they're here. And there was one night where we were walking. I've been having a lot of different types of encounters with them, from them slapping the side of the house many times, and them doing rhythmic beating on the ground and things like this at night about 3 a.m. when I would set up late at night. And then they also, one night, I was walking up on the porch and we were standing there, and all of a sudden we hear, and this isn't going to give any injustice, but it goes something like this. Something like that. But it was much longer than that, because I can't hold it as long as it did. It held it like 15 seconds, and it repeated it 3 times. And it was so deep and powerful that I immediately knew what it was. And I immediately knew that there's no creature, no bear, no nothing in the woods here that can do that. So, yeah.
Before you get started again, Daniel, one of the comments came by just a few minutes ago saying that they were a Bigfoot researcher in Canada.
Oh, okay. Let me look over here and see.
There it is, right there.
Zach. It says Zach Michael. I can't quite see the comment for some reason. My video is blocking it where I can't see it. Let me make it bigger here and see if I can see it better. Okay. I'm not going to try to pronounce your last name, brother Michael Hall or something like that, but I appreciate the comment. You're in Alberta, Canada. I believe you're 1,000% correct on agents controlling the narratives. Yep. That's what's going on with this, because they don't want us to know truth about anything. But that's not what the Supernatural show is about. Isn't that right, Shannon?
That's right.
We ain't gonna tell the truth here, or we're gonna find the truth, and then we're gonna tell the truth. And as best we can by our God-given abilities. We're going to find that. Let's see here. I'm looking over in the comments since I'm over here real quick. Somebody likes my impression.
Your impressions are getting good here.
Well, y'all guys remember we just had a guest on the show a couple weeks ago that here locally that seen one in the woods. There was three of them walking in. Three of them, I think he said, walking in a line, and the one in the front was 15 foot tall. See, when you go out and you're looking at the woods and you're thinking, I wonder if there's any Sasquatch, and you're making a mistake right out the gate because you're looking at something that's 6 foot tall and you're looking for head or eyes or shoulders or anything down at their waist. You've got to look way up and higher, and you've got to look at the dark spots. Anywhere that you can see that you can't see nothing, that's where they would be. And sometimes you'll see a swaying movement in them. They'll do like this and sway. But they typically will be behind trees, even if they're visible at all, because it's pretty apparent at this point that they've got supernatural capabilities when it comes to coming and going places. I don't know if they have the ability to open portals or if they just use them because they know of them. I'm not sure.
Well, since we're paused for a minute, I gotta go. But I wanted to pop in, guys, and say hi. And real quick before I leave, I just picked up some really cool Supernatural show merchandise. It's Christmas time, and I wanted to just share that. I'll be wearing them when they come in, and
Nice.
throw that out there. But
yeah, I'm getting ready to order a few things for myself from our site too as well. So,
other than
down with that.
I want to say thank you for letting me pop on, even though I'm kind of in and out today, and it's my mom's birthday, so I'm gonna go pick up my son and get all my stuff done for my mommy.
Okay, Miss
Well,
Shannon.
wish her a happy birthday from me, please.
I will. And I hope you guys have a beautiful, blessed day. Praise Jesus. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe and find out what is going on, what in the supernatural is going on. I almost messed up my tagline. What the heck? All right. Bye, guys.
Bye. See you later.
Bye-bye, Miss Shannon.
I'll be watching, so just so you know.
Okay. Oh, we'll keep it supernatural then.
Oh, you better. No, okay. Bye.
From two.
Oops. All right. Well, we'll talk to Shannon later. She'll be back I'm sure, on the next show, probably tomorrow. We're doing this show today to try to make up for yesterday because I got sick yesterday, but I'm doing fine. All right, let's keep going.
Different parts of the forest. They're not together. So besides the fact that one actually sounds like a female and the other one definitely sounds like a huge, gigantic male, and they're exchanging utterances. There's query. There's a query response, and then there's a statement response. It's the only way you can put it. So that's what they said. They understood.
Real quick, somebody made a comment and said if you could detect them with infrared. No, infrared, they can see infrared. It's one of their supernatural gifts is that they have the ability to see in the infrared spectrum. That's why some people report of their eyes turning red. It's because it's when they really focus on something, they have the ability to see in multiple light spectrums, and infrared is one of them. Now, thermal vision, yeah, that would be something where you may be able to see something. I can't guarantee it, but infrared has been proven because the cameras and stuff that people put up out in the forest and everything, trying to catch Bigfoot, they can see the light shining off of it, and they'll go around and unhook the camera and destroy it, or either just avoid it. That you're not going to catch them on infrared. So, anyways.
This is what we call the Berry tape. Alan Berry was a journalist, and he was not a part of this group of hunters that had been using this camp going back into the late 50s, early 60s. So they knew something was up there. So Alan, as a journalist and a scientist, decided to take up a big reel-to-reel tape recorder. They placed it all out at the camp and placed the microphone where they thought would be a good spot if they had any interaction. They also had put a big pot of stew on the camp stove to try to draw them in, to try to draw the creatures in. They referred to the creatures as Biggie. What you'll hear is the interaction between a large male, and the reason I say large is because it could not be a juvenile. It has to come from my professional experience, it has to come from a set of lungs that is much, much bigger than a human's, with what we would call the resonance of it alone. And then there's a female. And you will hear that it actually sounds like a female. The same difference that humans have. And then there is that this tape actually all starts out with a couple of whimpers or whistles or squeaks by a juvenile or even a child. And the three of them throughout this first part that I will play for you continue to interact with each other. And as we go along through this, I will point those out to you. I'd like to play a good cut of it first at real time, which is the speed at which it was recorded. And then I go back and pick specific parts of it to show you how I slow it down. That's obviously the juvenile who starts the whole conversation. The female. That's the female. It's also the female. You will be able to hear the difference. There. That was an exchange between the two. Befawadi, Befalulu. Even at real time, you can begin to hear the exchanges, what we call conversational turns. In other words, I take a turn to speak to you, and then you take a turn to speak back to me. So an exchange of utterance or conversational turns, and you'll also begin to hear in the background one of the cowboys, one of the hunters up there, who is trying to get the attention of the creatures. Once this starts happening, they send a guy out to stand by the big pot of stew and try to get their attention. Hey, come on down, and you will hear it. Come on down and get some dinner. One of the reasons that I knew immediately that this could not be fake, is that you will hear the hunter and the creatures speaking at the same time, stepping on each other's voice. It cannot be faked, and it certainly could not be faked in 1972. Play this at real time. They are making, by the way, they are making sounds that humans can't make. That's especially. Once you are clued in that this is a language, your mind is ready to accept the fact that these creatures are speaking a language. You can begin to hear it. You can begin, even at real time, to hear.
I was going to say, you mentioned talk about them speaking so fast. Here's an example in a different type of creature. A bird that chirps. He's speaking as fast as a fax machine. That's where they learned how to develop the fax machine and the communication at that level and speed. Birds, you think they're just whistling, but what they're doing is they're saying whole tons of information. And yeah, they repeat it sometimes a lot and everything. They're communicating extremely fast. It's like if you slow it down, take a bird's chirp and slow it down, you'll hear what ends up coming out sounding like a fax machine or very similar to it. So a lot of creatures communicate and speak in a lot of different manifested ways. And this is just how, we're considering the possibilities of what this gentleman is saying about these.
The language. That's real time. When I slow it down, it will become very apparent. It even begins to sound human. How do we know it's not a human and you've just speeded the tapes up? Well, no. You will hear the difference. Because humans can't make this. This does not sound like a human's voice speeded up. We all have heard human voices speeded up, even very fast. It sounds like the chipmunks. This does not sound like the chipmunks. Humans who had been in the little lean-to cabin that they had up there started to come out, and in their mind they were speaking in the cabin, we need to get out there and make sure we're capturing this, because they were all freaked out by it. When they come out, the big male eventually becomes aggressive. We call that a snarl. I want to show you the difference between the vocal footprint of the humans and the vocal footprint of the creatures. If you can see this.
Come on, Vicky. Come on now. Come on, boy.
This is the guy that was standing by the big pot of stew. Now, I personally would not have liked to have been the guy that was selected to be the decoy. Standing by the food going, come on down, Biggie. Come down and get some dinner. And they did that in order to distract the creatures from the guys that were moving the microphone up closer.
Okay, Biggie, here comes some dinner.
You hear them begin to walk.
Where did it sound like it come from?
Where did it sound
Which
like?
direction?
Which direction? Where did it sound like it's coming from? A little bit further up that way. You can hear the distance increasing between them and the guy at the food pot.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's about right, Al? They didn't know how massive and resonant the sounds were. You can see the sound footprint of the footsteps and how different the human voice footprint is from the Sasquatch footprint, the creature. Now here is when he begins to get really aggressive, and he kind of builds himself up into a rage. because what happened with the humans.
That sound that he's just making, just this might be off, but if you go on and listen to what they call the Tasmanian Devil on Bugs Bunny, the Bugs Bunny cartoon thing, it makes me wonder if they didn't get that sound or that from the knowledge of these creatures, these people, whatever they are. Because he does that in some of the verbal things that they have the Tasmanian Devil on Bugs Bunny do. Is he sounds like this, and then there's attributes of the Tasmanian Devil, as they call him, on the cartoon that actually are in a lot of ways related symbolically. If you don't understand symbolism in depth, you're not going to have a clue what I'm talking about. But the way the Tasmanian Devil spins in a toroidal spin like a tornado is symbolic for him being able to control potentially, I'm just saying they put symbolism into his behavior, into the different things that the Tasmanian Devil does. It even has some of the voice attributes, the way he talks somewhere. It's very similar to this. I can't help it. It is. Huh?
Very similar.
Yeah,
they use that toroidal field to travel.
Right, exactly. The Tasmanian Devil travels in a toroidal field. Damn gets it. See, that's what I'm talking about. Yep, that's exactly right. They use their toroidal field, the portals, which portals are a toroidal field, a gateway opening, just like your eye opens. And when your eye opens, the pupil expands. It's a gateway. It allows you to observe and enter into and participate with this world. Just like your ears go in, and if you look at the inner ear, it's in a toroidal spin, just like this. And there's other things I could get into all over the body, but that's a whole nother show. But yeah, Dan, you hit that nail on the head. Bam!
They don't go immediately back into the cabin, into the lean-to. So the big male begins to get aggressive. Probably in an attempt to, just like a human would, try to scare or intimidate. Now here, you see the humans and the creatures stepping on each other. Here are the humans. They're not going back in yet, which really makes him mad. Here we go.
That same thing again, the Tasmanian Devil, I've heard him do it on the Bugs Bunny cartoon. It's crazy what these people that are behind all this media do and put it right in our face and then laugh at it.
Considering Warner Brothers had done a lot of things that way to drop hints here, there, and it's not surprising that this comes so close to it, especially with the character of the Tasmanian Devil. Whenever he's starting to get annoyed, makes that same noise.
Yeah, that's right. Yep, sure does. Yep.
That's the female.
How'd you like to hear that conversation in the woods outside of your tent, Dan?
I don't think I can run that fast anymore.
I think I'd have to stay and fight because running wouldn't be an option. I'd have to break out the word of God on them. There ain't no doubt. Say, y'all guys go ahead. Get out of here.
That is exactly what would need to be done. That's what I do. That's in fact, the like I told you, the LBL and Cherokee Mountains that have some very aggressive cryptids. That's where I'm planning on going and use the Word of God to restrain that.
Yeah. And there's some evidence and some reports that I've heard of and read about that they actually do respond to the Word of God and will retreat immediately.
I've heard that.
Yep. Exactly.
Now the others, cryptids, don't seem to. But
right.
that I've only heard like one or two reports, or read one or two reports on that, where they just used the name of Jesus when they saw him, and it didn't seem to stop them. But they're a lot more aggressive, and I'm not too sure they're as intelligent as these beings are here.
Right. They're more carnal, seems like, than Sabe. The Sabe they operate closer to the behavior because they have partial DNA, according to the DNA test that's been done of human. They have female mother DNA, basically, is what they've got. An unknown father, and it doesn't match gorilla, ape, that kind of stuff. They have attributes that make us think that a little bit by some of the sounds they make. But when you look at the images of these beings in the face, like the image you see on the screen here, that's not an ape. That's a hairy man. I mean, look at this. I got that impression down too. You know, I'm a hairy man. A little joking around there, but the point is that these ain't apes, and we're trying to discover what they are. And it ain't just talking about Bigfoot here. Me and Dan have more purpose to this than than just talking about Bigfoot. What are they, and why are we worrying about the hairy men in the woods or some things sneaking around that we can't find hardly? Or because it's biblical in nature, for one, or at least there's potential in it being biblical in nature, for one. And there is things that me and Dan are looking into and trying to discern and understand that are related to it's important, and it will come into play at some point. I mean, even just the thought of the burden of Babylon being a prophecy that would come true one day is quite interesting if you've ever read it. If Steve with How to Hunt would look up the burden of Babylon, it's a big biblical prophecy. Look it up and read that. You're going to have to make sure you understand what those words mean, because the words that you're going to be reading are going to be in English. The words that they were written in is going to be, I believe, in Hebrew or Greek. Of course, it's Hebrew or Greek, but you're going to need to translate back. It's in Isaiah, I think it is. And you're going to need to look and make sure you understand the meaning of some of those words, because it's going to call out a centaur and some other kind of creature-sounding names that you think of being mythical. But one of them is if you start decoding it back, you'll find out that it's talking about these mighty men of the woods, the hairy men, this kind of stuff. And
That goes all the way back to the Tower of Babel.
Yep.
Yes, God scattered the languages, but there was a group that were turned into beasts.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they would have a separate language themselves,
mm-hmm.
which at least has a foundation for discussion as to what we're looking at here.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is an organized language.
Right. It appears to be so. I mean, if you listen to much of what we were just listening to there, it don't take too of an intelligent person to be able to tell that there's language going on there. And what he does later on in the video, which I'm not going to actually get into today, but what he does later on is he actually which y'all guys can go check it out. It's on the, let me pull it up here. You can go check out all of it. He's got 2 videos. He's got part 1, which we're watching, and part 2. And I'd encourage y'all guys to go check it out. It's on this channel right here. It's called Linda Eastburn. Okay. And you can go look at the interviews on there. I don't know if Scott Nelson actually even has a YouTube channel or not, but it's. I'm trying to think what I was going to say a second ago. He goes into just all the different attributes and everything of the language, and he slows it down. He slows it down so that you can hear them talking, and it sounds. You can tell they're holding a conversation, and there's a female and a male, and there's a minor there, a younger one, and the male is like, "I'm gonna kick some ass. I ain't putting up with this," and the female's like, "Leave them alone. We got dinner over here. Come on back quick." It's just like a man and a woman arguing, and then you hear the child charming in, every now and then as well, and you hear them, and it's like it's human-like behavior. I mean, if you're, let's say, okay, this property where I'm at here, if all of a sudden I'll go outside and I see somebody or whatever, something out here on my property, what's the first thing I want to do? Get the heck off my property. I'm going to use my voice. And what was he doing? He was trying to scare them away. He doesn't necessarily want to engage physically, which is why people in general try to engage in verbal judo with each other in order to try to intimidate, to keep from having to fight. Because when you get into a fight, people get hurt. Even them, they know that humans can hurt you. They know that humans have guns. They know also that we have a thing called dominion, especially the people who are aware of their dominion. And so they're not really wanting to engage with us, but they'll try to scare you away if you're someone who can be scared away, or if you're not, maybe you're someone that can stand there and control your emotions and control your dominion and know that there's nothing on this earth that can hurt you if you stand in that place. But, we're getting off into another subject again, of course. But
well, the main thing is, Daniel, is that it makes no sense at all that two beings would stand there and babble at each other without the other one knowing anything about what they're saying.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And they actually paused and stopped and allowed the other being to return the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a conversation. That's not babbling or making noises.
And the woman would sometimes step on him when she would start, coming back at him a little quick sometimes, but then they would go back and forth where they would not step on each other. It's very, very fascinating. And I thought that y'all guys would like to be introduced to this area of discussion, as also with the area of discussion that is tied directly to this, their DNA. Why does it have the DNA of a human mother, but the father is undeterminable? That sounds like I remember Ron Wyatt, and when he found the blood from the Ark of the Covenant in Golgotha, the skull, which is another long story, which I've had here on these previous shows, so you can go back and get into that too. But the DNA that was found, the blood that was found there, was still alive, according to Ron Wyatt, and it had the human female attributes, but the male side was undeterminable. So you say, okay, what does that mean? I don't know, but that's the question. You got to know the question first in order to seek an answer.
Because our understanding of creation, as far as living beings, require two sets, a male and female. Never before, until we started finding things like this, did you find just one set of DNA, one contributor.
Mm-hmm.
That means the other had no partner at all, at least not as we know it.
Yeah. Not sex, maybe even as we know it. Maybe it was something else. I don't know. I'm not saying anything what anything is. I'm saying I got questions.
The other one is that fascinates me is that if you take a look, these beings usually, now that it's not always, I mean, you have the skunk ape and things like that are in different elevations, but most of these are gathered in mountainous areas. And when you take a look, Moses going up on the mountain to meet God,
That's right.
Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration, going to set foot on the Mount of Olives, was crucified on Golgotha.
Where did the fallen angels come down to? The
Mount Hermon. Hermon.
It has to
so
do
there
with
is something else, I think, that may even be a limiting factor as to how far they can range because of whatever that means.
the questions. Yeah, the questions. If we can find the questions, because it's easy to ignore it all and not, oh, that's just some fantasy thing, Bigfoot. Or, oh, it's just some fantasy book called the Bible. Oh, it's just all these things. Well, then you're just ignoring everything. You're going to never learn nothing because you don't have any questions. You got to have the questions. You got to find the questions. And once you find the questions, if you try hard enough, you're going to find some answers. And that's where we're headed here with the Supernatural show, is to try to find some of these answers to some of these things that are going on. And guys, I think we've ran it about long enough today. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the show here. I appreciate all y'all guys being here, and I thank Dan, my brother, and from another mother, and my brother and our Father in heaven, from our Father in heaven, and I greatly appreciate Dan taking the time again today. I can tell it's starting to get dark there, and it's dark here. And we'll do this again, Dan, as you know. And Dan's gonna have a page on the Supernatural.show website here soon, where y'all guys will be able to go there and get a hold of Dan if you want to. Yeah, Dan specializes in spiritual boots on the ground warfare. If you're having a problem, something of this nature, or any kind of a supernatural nature, Dan is going to be able to help you with that kind of thing. And maybe I can too, but Dan has really impressed me with his knowledge in this realm, and I take his counsel seriously. So be looking forward to that, to being on the website. The website is thesupernatural.show. And y'all guys can go there and become members of it. There's a free membership level, and then there's a $3.99 a month level, and there's another level at $14 a month, depending on what access, what information, what type of stuff you're interested in. So with that being said, Mr. Dan, thank you so much for being on the Supernatural show today.
And it was all my pleasure, my brother.
And of course, we'll be back here again very soon. And I'm sure Shannon will be back next time too, our co-host. So until then, guys, we'll let you go, and keep your eyes open. Don't let anybody tell you anything. You need to prove all things in this world. You prove it. Don't let the television tell you something. Don't let the neighbor tell you something. You walk with a rod of iron in your hand, and you prove it. Because you need to know the truth for yourself and not take secondhand information for being truth. So don't even take the things I tell you to be truth. Prove it. Okay, guys? I love you. Our Father in heaven loves you. And we'll see you next time on the Supernatural Show.